So you don't want that. Okay, can everybody see that okay? Yeah, that's super. So I'll just introduce myself. I'm Elaine Duke. I work for the Early Years Consultants team, and I work alongside Sarah Wallace with the maths training. So my specialism is outdoors in any way, shape or form. So that's why I'm delivering the outdoor training. Basically, what we will do is just trawl through a lot of PowerPoint slides and photographs, and then excuse me, and then have a break halfway through, and then come back and have another go. I'm hoping it's not going to be 2 hours long. I don't think it will, but we'll see how we go. Okay. So this is what we're going to do today. So we're going to have a look at Maths Outdoors in context, and that physical learning environment in particular, and we'll also have a look at the core resources needed, as well as some top tips, really useful tips. And then we'll explore the role of the adult, who I believe is the most important resource for that modelling and planning and being a facilitator and a playful partner. And lastly, we'll look at some practical mathematical experiences outdoors. So I've got some photographs from a lead practitioner setting with real life examples of how she delivers maths outdoors. Okay, so let's start with a quote from Tina Bruce, and I feel this is really poignant. So when it comes to teaching and learning outdoors, this quote always comes to my mind. There's more than an element of truth here, and I do often spend far more time, or we spend far more time planning and preparing for learning indoors than we do outdoors, and I'm sure you probably agree. So when discussing indoor mathematical learning, we look at developing an effective maths continuous provision area, or we have it everywhere. And then when we're planning outdoor learning, we often miss the point. So an outdoor area doesn't become mathematically rich with that magical addition of laminated numbers and shapes displayed on a fence or a shed wall. That's not what mathematical rich environments look like. So if we're aiming for effective teaching and learning of maths outside, then we have to first appreciate the key differences between indoor and outdoor learning and understand that most enormous potential that the outdoors has for our children. So to put it into context, maths needs to be purposeful and meaningful and as real life as possible. So don't take the indoors out, as we've got much more possibility outdoors and we don't need to replicate what's indoors. And it's a great opportunity for problem solving and obviously those developing those children's characteristics of learning. So why is it important? So that engagement and motivation, our outdoor environments are stimulating and they can make learning much more exciting. So children are naturally curious about the world around them. And outdoor maths activities can tap into that curiosity and that making learning more engaging and enjoyable. So the real world application, outdoor settings provide opportunities to apply maths concepts in real life situations. So for example, children can measure the height of a tree, or they can count the number of petals on a flower, or calculate the area of a playground. All this is practical and relevant. So we don't need Unifix blocks and any type of mathematical plastic resource outside. We need to use what we've already got. You may bring other things in, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So it's that multi-sensory learning, isn't it? Being outside allows the children to use all the senses, so they can touch, they can see, they can hear, and they can even smell different elements. So that enhances their understanding and that retention of information. So moving on to physical development, obviously there's lots of physical activity outdoors, and which involves movement and activities like measuring distances and counting steps or creating shapes with the bodies. All those activities help the children's gross motor skills and coordination, which we feel needs development since COVID. Children's physical development isn't quite as good as it used to be. Obviously, we're generalising, but on the whole. We have that social interaction outside, so any outdoor maths games that require teamwork or communication really helps the children develop their social skills. They learn to work together, to share and to solve problems together. Creativity and critical thinking, well, that's that natural environment which encourages creativity and critical thinking, because if you find a leaf, it's never the same one day as it is the next, is it? So really use those natural materials to solve problems, and which can lead to really innovative and creative solutions outside. And very importantly, I feel that emotional well-being. So being outdoors can reduce those stress levels, improve the mood, and it gives them a really positive emotional state when they're outside. So it can enhance the learning and it can make children more receptive to those new concepts. And obviously, there's that connection with nature. So we've got an opportunity to promote those environmental awareness issues and stewardship and nature education. And this can be integrated into our maths teaching, such as talking about the weather patterns or looking at how plants grow. The list is endless. So lots and lots of reason why we think we should go outdoors to learn some of our maths. So this is really important. Learning outdoors is different to indoors, so I've mentioned it briefly. So outdoor spaces generally provide more space for that physical activity, and children will naturally want to explore outdoors using those large physical movements. And right from the beginning, the materials that we provide need to be bigger and more physically challenging than indoors. So children will develop cognitively alongside the development of those gross motor skills, as we said before. So make your outdoor learning very different to your indoor environment. So our physical environment needs to be welcoming for the children to play in. So often when I go out and about, I often see lovely outdoor areas all set up, which is great, and that's very welcoming. But other times I can go and there's things that's led about all over the place. There's things that I feel like have been out for quite a few weeks on the floor and not tidied up. So I really believe that we should tidy up at the end of the day to make it welcoming for our children for the next day. That I feel like that's really important to make it appealing for them. We could have plenty of seating outside as well. So whether we have crates or logs or benches or 2 crates and a plank, it really doesn't matter. We could also have some den areas. And if you're lucky enough to have lots of green space, then have a permanent den, or it could even be a hole in the hedge. But if not, create a simple den with a tarp. And ask yourself, have the children been included in discussing the opportunities for learning outdoors? It's really good to involve our children in these discussions when we're thinking about making improvements or adjustments to our areas. Ask the children what they'd really like or how you could make it better. Do the resources include lots of natural resources and materials for them to be creative with? Are there plenty of open-ended resources? And is there free access to mark making materials to encourage this and to support their play? So we want to encourage children to make mathematical marks as well as other marks too. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So moving on to our core resources. A mathematical rich environment is created by ensuring that children have the freedom to play, investigate, question and experiment with their ideas. using those open-ended resources that have no fixed way of being used. And they're often referred to as loose parts, as we know. So those natural resources, some man-made resources, materials found within your outdoor area, and try to avoid spending money on special maths kits because they're really not necessary. And you'll probably have all the resources anyway. And the trick is to remember that being outside, the resources will get weathered and they'll wear out quite quickly. So keep all your nice things inside. Don't worry about thinking it needs to look pristine. So in the next few slides, we're going to have a look at some ideas for storage, and then we'll move on to some mathematical resources. That's a bit blurry, sorry. So yeah, somewhere where you can store your maths resources. They don't have to be, as I said, the things from inside, and they doesn't have to look like this. So it might just be plastic boxes, because we have to be realistic. Outside, things get wet and damp, and so a plastic box is usually the ideal container to store things in. But storage is crucial. And I'll try to show you a few examples of ideas where we can store our resources. But we need to encourage our children to be independent in their play. So if you can create a self-select option, it's a really good idea for your children. So here's a very simple idea. If you've only got a small outdoor area, then a great idea, it's a grab and go system where you could store some mathematical resources in the bags. The children help themselves to take them to wherever they want to play and then put them back at the end. So in these, there might be some measuring resources or some counting collections or some loose parts. There might be some number lines. There might be some number rhyme resources. The list is endless, really. Here's another idea. So that's just a trolley with some plastic boxes on. So if we're a bit stuck for storage outside or with no room, then we can have a trolley inside and just push it out at the beginning of the day. I mean, I know some of you will be thinking, well, that's all right, but we can't afford a shed or a fancy unit. But anything you've got that's got wheels on, whether it's a trolley, it's a truck, or it's an old lady's shopping trolley, it doesn't really matter as long as the children can access the resources. I think the crates at the bottom are really good for mathematical mark making resources. So this photograph isn't for the resources on the shelves. It's just to say that an old bookcase will absolutely suffice. We don't need to have all those fancy numbered resources. And here's our old lady's shopping trolley. And I'm not ashamed to say that I use these for my forest school training, because they're just easier to shove all the bags in and move from one place to the other. So they are really good if you've got to transport resources. And I'm just thinking about sandcastles. If you want to transport resources to the beach, these are great, or even just a backpack. So really, really simple ideas. The next thing I want to talk about is think big. So when we think about outdoor resources, we think about bigger resources, not the things from inside, as I keep saying, but we want to develop those gross motor skills. So we need to have bigger resources outside. So when you're planning your outdoor space, think big. So that's large crates, planks of wood, wooden poles, pegs, and different fastenings. They'll all lead to large construction with lots of learning potential. Also think carefully about children's predictable interests as a really good motivator for learning. Children will want to create dens, large and small spaces of varying sizes for their imaginative play. So let them just have a go and you be the facilitator. Doesn't really matter what it looks like, but you might need some tarpaulins, you might need some netting, you might need some other materials like big sheets, duvet covers, big blankets. Really doesn't matter. As they're creating those dens and those enclosed spaces, they're going to be learning about size, they're going to learn about scale, capacity, height, length, and estimation. But most importantly, they'll be working together. So the size and scale of materials will mean that children will need to often work together to achieve what they have set out to do. There'll be a high degree of problem solving too. And this is the perfect context for seeing maths as meaningful, challenging, and ultimately rewarding. So yeah, if you take one thing away, just think big. This is just a photo of a water play area. I'm not saying it needs to look like this, but it's very open-ended. And there's lots of opportunities. So water play outdoors will also provide endless possibilities for exploration and engagement. And if we plan it carefully, the children will learn so much. Outdoor water play, again, needs to be on a much bigger scale to the indoor equivalent and definitely doesn't need to be restricted to a water tray. A water tray is fine alongside other resources. So think about the size and scale of what's on offer. So you might want some large buckets, some jugs, some watering cans with different attachments. You might want different size containers for different depths, which will lead children to think about capacity as they lift those really heavy buckets. We might want some pieces of guttering and tubing of different lengths and sizes alongside crates or some water stands. And children will explore how water can be transported through those different channels if we give them those open-ended resources and allow them to explore. Remember, learning possibilities will be reduced significantly if the resources are fixed to a wall or a fence. Whilst a water wall will look tidy and presentable, it limits the number of ways for children to work with the resources. Now, that's true of your older children. Your younger children, you may want to have something fixed on a fence, but I would always say that in a preschool, with preschool children, have some loose resources for them to problem solve with. Mud kitchens. So mud kitchens can be a bone of contention with me. I absolutely love them. I think they're absolutely amazing, but we need to really think about the learning and how we're moving it on and not just tipping mud in a bucket and mixing it round and adding water and that's it. So it's a great way to support mathematical learning. The role of the adult is crucial in this area as the play can soon become very stagnant and then little learning's happening. So it's therefore vital that we keep reassessing the resources and opportunities in the mud kitchen area and ask yourself, what are the children learning? So we can have measuring and counting. Children can use measuring cups, spoons and other containers to measure the ingredients like mud, water and sand. And this helps them to understand volume and quantity. We can look at comparing and estimating. So when children mix the different materials, they often compare the amounts and they estimate how much more they need. And this practices those skills in comparison and estimation. Through play, children can learn about weight, they can learn about density and volume. So they might notice that wet mud is heavier than dry mud, or that a cup of sand takes up more space than a cup of water. So problem solving, so making those recipes and concoctions requires children to think critically and to solve those problems again, such as figuring out those right proportions of ingredients they need for the recipes. Pattern. So children will often create patterns and sequences with those natural materials like stones, leaves, flowers, and that helps them to understand about simple patterns. And then spatial awareness, stroke spatial reasoning. So arranging those items in the mud kitchen, such as setting up a pretend meal, helps children develop that spatial awareness, and it understands the relationship between the objects as well. So there's all that learning that can take place in a mud kitchen, and we just need to be mindful of how we're moving it forward and adding and enhancing to the mud kitchen. So core resources. So I would suggest that we have things like sticks and stones and leaves and pine cones and shells and acorns, whatever you can find. So these can be used for counting, sorting, and for pattern making. We might have some number resources, so those numbered log slices or numbered pebbles that we can make ourselves. We don't need to buy them. These are great. They've been kept in a drawstring bag and made readily available for either the adults to extend learning or the children. And stones painted with numbers and dots can be used for number recognition or can be used for sequencing, and that's simple maths. So it's good to give them a different different types of displaying number. So whether it is the actual numeral, whether it is the dots, or whether it's a picture with so many things painted on it. 10 frames are absolutely brilliant, and when children go to school, they'll be using 10 frames all the time. So this is just a piece of fabric that I've drawn a 10 square on. And I have, for my training, I have lots of different sizes of these. So I have a great big one that's on a big sheet that I take with me on the road and use outside. This is a small one. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they're like, but they're very easy to put together. Very simple. Number lines. Again, these can be made very easily, or you can just draw it on the ground. Money, this is a tricky one, isn't it? So children rarely see real money these days. And as we all use our cards or phones to pay for everything, don't we? However, children need to learn the value of money. So, and they need to know how to use it, and they need to know how to handle it. So we need to keep hold of those coins and those foreign coins too. Gather yourself a collection that can be used outdoors, and maybe you might need to count it in and out. Say no more. Talking about being realistic and current, what the children are interested in. This is just an example of a car wash. It's a great example for using money outdoors. So the money can be used to pay for the car wash. They can pay for the job. They can learn about capacity. They can learn about measurement for the water. So the mathematical language is endless to name, but a few. So using it in a real life context, money is great. So a shop or a garden centre, whatever you want to do for role play outside, using it in a meaningful context. Here's just a selection of counting collections for the children to use in their play. So it's good to have these in little boxes or little bags that they can use to either make patterns or for counting, to make pictures even. So gather yourself a collection of natural resources. And of course, we have those seasonal collections, don't we? So conkers in autumn and pine cones whenever. It doesn't really matter. Whatever you can find at the time. Shells. Measuring. So I highly recommend Juliet Robinson. She is Creative Star Learning. That's her website. She's written 2 amazing books called Messy Maths and Dirty Teaching, and the website is amazing too. Sadly, she's not a very well lady, but somebody is keeping her website up to date. But there's so much information on there for you, and the website, I'll show you at the end. I've got a list of suggested websites, but she suggests making a measuring box with resources in, so with standard measures and non-standard measures in for the children to use. So those milk crates are brilliant for that. Put your resources in there. Children can use them in their play. Measurement. So children can learn so much about measurement from a stick. So its length, its thickness, its shape, and tape measures are great outdoors. Children love them, and the longer the better. So there's lots of ideas for measurement, but they're just a few. Weight. So weighing scales, easily made with 2 buckets and a branch. or you can get yourself some from the charity shop, or have a go at making your own. So I'm sure some of us already have some of these big weighing scales already, but they're brilliant for the children to explore weight, and a great addition to your mud kitchen. If we want to explore capacity, then we need lots of different containers of different sizes for children. So these can be purchased really cheaply from places like Asda or wherever. But I love the old tin buckets that you can pick up from the junk shops. It doesn't really matter as long as they are different sizes. It's so much better if we can reuse and recycle our resources, isn't it? So do your best to just gather resources from wherever you can. We don't need to go and purchase any, but sometimes it's good to have some with the actual measurements on the outside. Timers. So these have a variety of uses, either for timing your children to develop those turn-taking skills, or how long it takes to run across the field. Timers in the mud kitchen. Digital ones offer a great different dimension too. So outdoor activities can help children grasp the concept of time in a practical and engaging way. So they can learn about seconds and minutes and hours by timing different activities, such as jumping or running or doing a task. And that routine and structure, so it incorporates time into the incorporating time into outdoor maths activities can provide a sense of routine and structure. So it helps them understand the importance of that time management and planning. So you could use timers for tidy up time, as I'm sure some of you do, or how long a child spends on a particular activity. So lots of uses for timers. Shape, position and movement. So you can't go wrong with loose parts. And I know schools often have those community playthings blocks, and they're absolutely brilliant, but if you haven't got access to things like that, then obviously loose parts, as you can see on the other photograph, are amazing. So ways to teach shape, position and movement. So we could have shape hunts outside. They can find round stones, rectangular leaves, triangular sticks. We can have obstacle courses that require children to move in specific ways. We can have mapping and navigation for that spatial reasoning. So create simple maps out to the outdoor area and have children follow directions to find things that are hidden. Boys in particular, I've always found love maps, absolutely love them. So it's great to introduce that. Building shapes with sticks and stones. That shadow play. So on a sunny day, explore your shadows, observe how the shadows change position and shape throughout the day. And they can also create shapes with the bodies and see how the shadows mimic the shapes. Simon Says, with a focus on positional language. So jump to the left, make a circle with your arms, in and out. Okay, lots of ideas for shape, position and movement. So data handling. So for recording purposes, clipboards, whiteboards, chalkboards are perfect, or even perspex and mirrors are great for mark making. Raid your recycling bin. So old scrap paper, don't throw it away. Use it again outside on a clipboard. Cardboard boxes, we all get resources delivered in cardboard boxes, don't we? And they're brilliant for mark making outdoors. So don't throw them away, reuse them. So just a little bit about mathematical mark making. It can be very easily overlooked, and it's just as important to make marks for maths as it is for literacy. So we can record how many goals have been scored at football. We can record how many skittles have been knocked down. That free mark making around the environment. Mathematical mark making includes all the symbols that represent children's mathematical thinking. So random marks on the ground or children's attempts at numeral symbols and shapes is fine. It doesn't matter what it looks like, as long as it represents that mathematical thinking. They don't need to make perfect tally marks, just a mark. And the most important thing is that these marks make sense to the child who's made them. And as adults, we need to value and recognise these marks, which require us to engage with the children. So the mark making should be entirely child initiated and part of their play when they're ready. Do we play games outside? I feel like we've lost this skill, and that's probably because I'm a little bit old. So I'm a real advocate for playing games outside, and there are so many benefits. So outdoor games can make learning more engaging and memorable, and children often find it easier to grasp those mathematical concepts when it's in a real world setting. So when they're really involved in playing the game. So some examples of outdoor games are ball games, target games, skittles, fairy footsteps, what time is it, Mr. Wolf, hopscotch, and I'm sure you could name a million others. But really think about your gameplay outside with your children, and try to extend this learning through gameplay, because it really, really is important. And it's great for the social skills, isn't it? Children working together for their teamwork and that collaboration. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Because I feel like I've taught you all to death. We can have welcome whoever that Jade is. Is it Jade or is it? Put your camera. Jane
and Kathleen from Giant Leap.
Hiya.
The name over. You're right.
Sorry, I didn't stop when I was chatting, because I thought we're recording this. In fact, I'm just going to stop the recording.